give you a little bit of background about Pollination Guelph. We are a completely volunteer-run organization, charitable organization. We've been in Guelph and working in Guelph and across Ontario for about 16 years. And there's sort of 5 pillars that we want to get out there and let people know what we're doing. And it includes education, conservation, community outreach, research, and advocacy. And all of those areas need help. So before I go too much further, I do want to also let you know that Pollination Guelph is based in Ontario, in Guelph, Ontario, which is the traditional territory of the Attawandaran and of the Neutral people. It's covered by the Dish with One Spoon covenant, and we honor the original ancestors of this land and our current neighbors, and encourage you to consider relations to the land and the people near you, since so many people are coming from so many different places from across North America globally, because we've got a UK person as well. Don't forget, lots of wonderful books available for you to purchase online on our website. And some of them, this is one of my favorite ones, Pollinators of Native Plants. And for those of you who are interested in bees, this is a cute little one, nice little field guide of some common native bees for both Canada and the United States. And it's sort of a miniature version of this lovely bee document here. We've had some great sponsorships helping us pay for a lot of these things. And, we depend on these sponsors to support these presentations, to support the work we're doing. And for this particular session, we need to thank Abood Associates, but also Bee Sweet Nature Company and Origin Native Plants. And so without further ado, I would like to introduce you to Claire Mason. She is a nurse at Hospice Wellington and in Guelph, and she provides bedside care for residents and families. Claire first felt the healing nature of gardens when she worked as a live-in caregiver and gardening support for an elderly woman in the Lake District in the UK. Her interest in plants and landscapes flourished from there, and completing a certificate in horticulture from the New York Botanical Garden in New York City, and then going on to work as a gardener in the city of Toronto in some of the most significant gardens. Returning to school for nursing and eventually becoming a palliative care nurse was a passion she was amazed and humbled to find herself in later in life. Claire feels grateful to experience the connection between her love and the history with plants and landscapes with the philosophy on which she uses to help guide her provision within palliative care. When Claire is not bedside, she can be found exploring the streams and rivers, learning the art of fly fishing, camping at her beloved Craigleith Provincial Park, and dreaming of the perfect alpine trough, or relishing in the experiences shared with loved ones. So I'm going to stop sharing so that Claire can share her screen. But while she's doing that, I want to keep in mind some questions that you might like to ask Claire after her short presentation. So Claire, you have an opportunity to share your screen.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Well, hello, everybody. I'm first going to say that I'm technologically a little bit challenged. But I'm going to do my very best, and thank you for your patience and support. So as I said in my introduction, I am a nurse at Hospice Wellington. I was amazed with the gardens that surrounded our building when I first started working here as a nurse. And it was only in the fall that I went to outside because I saw these busy little bees buzzing and working, and I wanted to talk to them and see what they were doing. And that's how the connection I made with the Gosling Pollination Gardens and your organization as well. So I work here as in the capacity of a nurse, not in horticulture, but love the fact that I can blend the two. So I'm going to start with my presentation. So this is just Hospice Wellington Garden Reflections, and here is one of our, it's a living wall that we have in our foyer that brings some light from the skylight into the reflections of the leaves, and really warms the front. Okay. So I'm not sure if you know about our gardens here, but it's the Gosling Pollination Gardens. It was in 2012. We have a 9-acre site that surrounds a building quite urban, and they decided to get some involved and help us to soften and bring pollinators and life and balance to our building. And there's a picture that I have here of the side of our building there. What I love about the gardens here in terms of how I do my nursing care is that it's very much a balance. It's homeostasis is a big topic in nursing, about finding that balance and it's ever so always moving, but finding that perfect connection. Sorry, I'm in a room where staff keeps coming in, so I'm sorry, I'm working tonight. Here we are. I'm going to tell you a story. You're probably expecting me to talk about how lovely in the summer and the spring and all the blooms and the butterflies and the bees and all the things that we have, the pollinators visiting our gardens, which is all true. But I wanted to start with what actually just happened 2 days ago. And that's where I'm going to start my presentation. And this first slide is to tell my daughter about my tree. And I was nursing a lady in one of our rooms, and actually you can see it here. It's probably the second one down. She's in her 80s with end-stage cancer, had spent a couple of months in the hospital, a really difficult situation. And she was quite bright that morning, and she said to me, you know, when I first was backed in here in the stretcher and I saw your bay window, I knew I was home. And what she meant by that is that she was from a farm and she had a big bay window there, and she used to be able to see the plants and the trees and the birds. And it was a beautiful morning, and we opened the window and we could hear some doves. And she wanted her bed positioned by the window. Let's see if I can get the slide going here. So we moved her bed. Oh, sorry. Trying to share my slide. Here we go. Oh, well, my slides aren't working very well. I'm sorry, everybody. I'm jumping ahead here. So I'm going to talk more just about that last slide. So we moved her bed up to the window, and she was able to hear the doves and see them sitting in the trees, and how much comfort that brought her. So when her daughter came to visit in the afternoon, all she could think about was this tree. And the daughter came out in the hall and said, my mom's talking about this amazing tree, and it's your tree. And it was just such a moment for someone who has had so much pain and illness and no light in her life, and to have had that moment with us just a couple of days ago. And this other slide I have here is, it's called A Gentle Moment of Peace. And you'll see that balcony there. This is the exact same day, a little bit later in the day. And I have another resident who is very, very end stage of life, with a husband and a young daughter. And they're very distraught about what changes they've been seeing. So I brought them into this back room here, and we have how we could connect with her, ways that they could communicate with her. And just then, I'm going to try to slide the slide. Here it is. Out that window, if you can see the sumac there, little bird came up and started feeding on the seeds. And the daughter looked out the window, and you could just feel that the energy shifted in the room. There was a moment of peace and a moment of beauty. And we all paused with that and had just a moment to say how beautiful that was and how spring was coming. And then we went forth with our conversation, but how that shrub and the landscapes around our building really did benefit in that conversation, which was very difficult for the family. And another part of the gardens for me, from a staffing perspective, is the nights can be long. I'm on nights tonight. A lot of things can happen. People who are end of life don't set on a regular schedule, so nights can be as busy as days with symptom management and family situations and concerns and support. But every morning when the sun starts to come up, no matter what season it is, I do go outside and I go and I see what's happening in our garden, and what subtle changes that are coming. And for me, that gives me a connection to this cycle of life and what I can say goodbye to and what I can say hello to, and anticipate some things that are coming, and relish in the beauty of the simplicity of something like right now, the little daffodils are coming up through the ground. So these gardens have made a tremendous impact on our residents and our staff, and our community. And I just wanted to say how important and grateful we are to Pollination Guelph and the Gosling Pollination Gardens for the work that they've done. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Claire. And it's so nice to see the connection between the plants that are there and you know how they can impact the patients. I'm not sure. I don't even know. I realize I'm not sure what word I can use. I don't want to use the word client. I did.
No, we use resident.
Resident.
Residents here. And I think what was amazing about talking to the gardeners who do the work is that they see the building from the outside, but I see the building from the inside and what we see through the window. And a lot of our residents are not able to go out on the patio. The ones who do absolutely love it. But a lot of our people are not well enough to even be wheeled out in their beds out of the hall to the open areas. So what they see through the window, I see as well. So it's just, I'm going to be working hopefully with them just to sort of give them the view, bird's eye view from our residents who are unable to leave their rooms and see what we can bring in to the rooms through the windows.
Right. Then that's actually a very interesting perspective because, you know, we're on the outside all the time and we're looking at, oh, what can we see? But you're absolutely right. It's, you know, and the interaction of the animals that might use those plants and what people might see. The other thing also is that, is this garden also not only benefiting the residents, but their families that come and visit?
Absolutely.
So do they tend to use it outside of their visiting time or?
I find that visiting here can be a week long. Some people don't leave. We have ways to accommodate people where they just stay with us. We have husbands and wives and who might just move in with us for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So they aren't leaving, but they are going outside to their vehicles or going out to sometimes meet other family members. We have visitor numbers that we have, so they do utilize the outside quite a bit. But the one thing that I love about a family story, I can tell just quickly, is sometimes we don't understand why families are doing what they're doing, and grief is a complicated process, and expressions are varied. And we had one woman who very, very distraught and upset and upset about the furniture and was moving furniture around, and no one could really understand what the issue was. And it took me sitting down and just saying, oh, you know, what is it about the layout of the room that's bothering you? And she said, well, my husband and I gardened a lot, and it's really important that he looks out the window and everything's in the way, and this needs to be fixed. And we did exactly that. We moved everything out of the way. We got the bed up to the window. We positioned everything. And unless you'd asked her what the problem was, it would have been easy to just assume that this is just a person who's struggling with their grief, and you know, why are they moving the furniture? It's making it difficult for nurses to get around the bed. But really, when you got down to it, it was a way that she could connect with her spouse.
Yeah.
And then she showed me a whole slideshow of her garden and all the work they've done, and we got to reminisce. And while he couldn't share and talk, he listened and he squeezed her hand. It was so. That's another way families can kind of participate with the gardens and share their story of the resident with us so we can provide better care for them.
And, you know, having more than just, you know, a few shrubs and grass, it isn't the same impact as perhaps having a floral garden or having, you know, a garden that's got a lot of diversity within it too, I'm sure. Makes a big
I like our gardens because the wind and there's a lot of movement. There's not, from our windows, it's hard to see detail, right down on the ground kind of detail, but there's a lot of shadowing and light. There's a lot of like winter interest with snow patterns. I love the collection of plants. They're even in the most dire early spring when things are looking really scrubby and rough, it's still absolutely beautiful and has beautiful shadows from the lights from our buildings. And that's something that we enjoy, looking out the windows at night.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of a garden that has interest no matter what time of year. Now, yes. I'm hogging the mic, I realize, with questions, and I was wondering, Andalyn, is there anybody there that has a question that you can see?
No, not that I've seen. So, but none of them have come up.
Otherwise, actually, Claire, if you want to stop sharing, and then I'll just put this, I'll just share my next slide. Okay. But I, you know, if people have any questions for Claire, please, you know, get them in there. So we need to make sure, because I know Claire has to, she has to leave soon to go to work, to get
Yeah.
to get to her shift. So she is a very busy woman, a very busy woman. You're possibly starting a new job though, but also involving gardens, which I think
It
is
is.
wonderful.
It's fascinating because I've just been hired as the outreach coordinator for a hospice in Toronto that is for homeless people and marginally vulnerably housed people in downtown Toronto. And they have a rooftop garden that supposedly is absolutely desolate and they need some help. So I'm not only going to be doing the outreach for our residents, but I'll be definitely doing some volunteer stuff, getting that space ready for our people. So.
Excellent, excellent. So Andalyn, any questions pop up yet?
Yes, there's one from Lauren Widmer who asks Claire, how could we make the garden better for the residents?
I think that from the view of a lot of people whose sight, maybe their level of consciousness isn't as high as ours, that a lot of bold gestures, bright leaves changing, structured things, even bird feeders, in a way would be nice. It would be nice if through the Gosling Pollination Garden and the gardeners could make even like a little sheet every couple of weeks or a month about what's actually happening in the garden that maybe families could read to the residents to tell them what's happening outside. So there's a variety of ways. And also we do an honoring ceremony at the front of our building when we have large numbers of people wanting to honor their person before the funeral home takes them away. And it would be nice to have maybe some more potted plants there to brighten it. And we also do weddings sometimes if people are wanting to marry just before they pass on the back deck. So keeping that in mind, maybe it could be, we could have like a little conversation about different ways that we could add to those three parts.
And
Great ideas.
the other question is kind of related to that, but even more specific from the perspective of the inside, like even your stories were sharing from the perspective of inside the building, looking out.
Yep.
What are suggestions for garden? Because most people, when they make a garden, they're thinking, looking at it from the outside. But what about any suggestions for people inside?
Well, it's a community building so the outside is incredibly important. That the garden is almost like this beautiful blanket that wraps around us and protects us from the street. But when you look at it from the perspective of those who are dying, they are not accessing it in the way that the rest of us are. So it is through the windows, it's through stories that their families can tell them about what they're seeing. And it's when they're well enough and when they are, we definitely make the effort to do it, to take them out on that patio, to have it in a way that it's as close up front, that so they can see it with their limited vision at times, or the amount of time that they're able to focus on something is very short. And then also just acknowledge that the front of the building is very much a place where we say goodbye to everybody. That's where we pause and say goodbye. So maybe even making a little bit more attention to what we could do there, because that is sort of where we hand our people over to someone else, which is difficult. So.
Okay.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Okay.
We'll go on to our next speaker, and thank you, Claire, for giving up your time. And
oh, it's okay. Everyone keeps coming in because they're wondering where I am, but I told them they're going to wait. I'm going to be there in a minute. It's okay.
Well, thank you very much.
Thanks in the chat as well.
Okay, welcome. And I'm so sorry that the slides, I had about slides that were really great and I love them. And I, for some reason, wasn't able to present them properly, but I apologize for that.
Well,
and I'll fix that for the next time I have this opportunity.
Not a problem. The ones you showed us were just as meaningful. So appreciate the time. So take care, Claire.
Thank you.
We're going to go on to our next speaker. And our next speaker is Trevor Barton. And Trevor is the chair and co-founder of the Enabling Garden. And I'm just going to do this. He's the chair and the co-founder of the Enabling Garden. And as of August 1st, 2017, he retired then. And after finishing a 30-year career in waste management with 18 years in the city of Guelph, starting at the Eastview sanitary landfill through to acting manager, waste Resource Innovation Center. And then he was recruited for a 12-year stint at the region of Peel as a waste program planning supervisor. He is a career specialist in compost science and utilization, management of household hazardous waste, and waste reuse and reduction, recycling, recovery, planning, policy development and implementation, and with a geographic penchant for interpreting patterns and behaviors. And he's got a number of achievements. And for those of us who really do like the bins, he was one of the people that launched Guelph's Green Bin program to 30,000 households in 1995. And in 2006, launched the Peel of Regions Green Bins to 300 municipality appointee to the Ontario Compost Standards Guidelines. He's won the City of Guelph Mayor's Award for the Guelph Enabling Garden in 2016. He is a home vegetable and ornamentals gardener and canning and preserving fall fair competitor. And he is a Guelph Enabling Garden volunteer and chief grant writer. So Trevor's done a lot of wonderful things, but he's here today to talk to us about what he does at the Enabling Garden and why it's such an important place and how pollinators and plants are part of that Enabling Garden. So I'm going to turn things over to Trevor. And I'm going to stop sharing so that he can share his screen. There we go. So Trevor, you can share yours and I'm going to spotlight you.
Very, very good. Okay. We're located in Riverside Park. The Guelph Enabling Garden opened in 2005, so 18 years ago. And we are an autonomous board that works in a public park. And that's one of the things, our claim to fame is we're the first public space enabling garden in Ontario. And we are now servicing about 20,000 visitors a year. And we are running from March through till November, largely due to climate change. But our garden opens up a lot sooner and runs a lot later each year as well too. So quite exciting to be able to do this. And here the key features of the garden. We built our garden and we conduct therapeutic sessions for several community groups, including seniors and young adults with cognitive, emotional, and physical disabilities. And we have raised beds, textured walkways, braille signage, and our garden is split out because we want it's a sensory garden for people of all abilities, and sight, sound, smell, touch, and taste. And pollinators make this happen, and that's why I'm so excited. And this is native plants as well too, are used to demonstrate how we learn to grow gardens and not rely on water and chemicals, and to attract pollinators. And so we are a volunteer group. We have about 50 volunteers, and we have the horticultural therapist. Then we have 3 to 4 sessions a week, and we also offer winter programming as well too, where a horticultural therapist goes out to community groups and associations, and because what we're trying to do, and the intent behind that, is to drive participation. So spring is coming, and we like to get people started and active in the garden. And in pre-pandemic days, we applied for a grant from Pollination Guelph to build a children's pollinator garden, which I'll talk about. And it is a teaching garden for children, and I really do like this polymer clay. This is one of the craft things that we built. But the next slides will demonstrate what we do with the horticultural therapy. And I must tell everybody, these are free programming or free programs. We just want desire and will, and we tend to have 30, 40 people, sometimes 4 or 5. It all varies. We have a registration system, but we do encourage families and caregivers to also join in with the children, and it is quite fun. And this is a quick slide of the pollinator garden that we put in. Now, unfortunately, we for 2020 and 2021, we lost those seasons. We still had a volunteer group that worked, but we couldn't offer any programming due to COVID, and we had restrictions, so we couldn't allow people could walk through the garden, but we couldn't offer programming. Just we had socially distanced, and then, even though it was outdoors, we just couldn't do it. So we're finally back to offering programming and safe distancing as well too, and some people were masked as well too. But this is really the jewel in Guelph's crown as well too. I mean, it's a destination point. I speak all over Ontario at horticultural societies and master gardeners about this enabling garden. As I say, it's a jewel in Guelph's crown. This garden was built it was a millennial project that we initiated in 1999. Betty Richard and myself sat down at a table, what the city of Guelph was going to do for the millennia. And what do we have in common? And around the table, all of us love to garden. It's surprising. We're all from different disciplines as well too. And that was the impetus of where this idea came from, because there was no public horticultural therapeutic garden within the city of Guelph. There was one at one at Homewood, and also at St. Joseph's Hospital. Well, those are private access gardens as well too. And this is the public park that makes us unique and different. And this is part of some of the programming that we just initiated this past summer. And to show garden visitors, we have these wonderful signs that we put out there. We put them out for the instructional programming, and try to have them. This one for the monarch butterflies around with the flowers that are there. We also have the hummingbirds. When the catalpa tree is in bloom, it is just covered in ladybugs and hummingbirds. So it's and which is different because everybody thinks of bees, but there's many other pollinators as well too. So and we have a number of through September through to October, we have a lot of school groups come visit us as well too, that the word is getting out. And this is a good place to collect seeds. And we've been trying to work to have monarchs come to the garden as well too. And we give away milkweed seeds and give them so people can take them home as well. And we as I said, the honeybees, as you can see, these beautiful flowers that are attracting the bees as well too. So we talk about them. We have people can recognize them, and also we our horticultural therapist is who is supported by volunteers. Our programming, the 3 to 4 offerings a week, are jam-packed. I mean, it's just full. It's really, really exciting. And this is the most important of all the garden visitors that we get as well too, is the children that we can get out to come to the garden, and you see these smiling faces and the crafts that they do. It is quite encouraging. And here's the next generation of people learning about pollination, how important this is, and also just the learning about the joy garden is really what our mission is to do for people of all abilities, and to offer this. And one of the things with the raised beds, we also have accessible garden tools that people who, and a lot of our visitors, surprisingly, are people who have downsized. They've moved to apartment buildings, but they miss their gardens. And here we offer this, and some people plant vegetables, really to feed the squirrels, I swear. But also we have a lot of perennials that go in, and annuals, and we have raised beds, and people actually are stewards of those beds for a season. We have a lottery system just due to demand. But we invite community members of all abilities and ages to experience sensory interaction with plants and creating opportunities. And you see the age groups. And we also have tea and tales every Friday morning that start from June and go to Labor Day. In the early days of 2006, 4 people would show up. Now we have an excess of 125 people each Friday morning. I have the wonderful pleasure of serving the coffee, and it's the Guelph Guild of Storytellers, and Robert Munch, who is the patron for the Guild, has come out a couple of times to tell as well too. That's quite exciting. So we draw a lot of people in because we do family days. For this coming season, not only will we be talking about pollinators, but the Story Guild we're going to have 13 Fridays and 2 Saturdays, so 15 sessions this summer coming up. So the garden will get a lot of usage, and people visit it. As I say, it's families, people not associated with any association or with or without disabilities, but it's an area of repose within a very busy city. So we're very, very proud of it. And everyone is welcome. You just have to register ahead of time so we know how many things to buy for crafts. And these things were just delightful. These little polymer part of the craft kits that the kids had done. And also people can reserve private groups to come out as well too. We don't charge for that. We do ask for donations, but we're funded through New Horizons for Seniors and United Way and the City of Guelph as well. And we also have brick sales, so I'm not going to talk about that. We have a lot of information and contact us with Twitter, with Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and our horticultural therapist. Her email address is here, plus the phone number to call, and then our website and email address. Actually, it's enablingarden.org is our website. And here is the email address. And thank you for having the patience to put up with that.
Oh, Trevor, that was wonderful. And it is a beautiful garden. And the fact that it's not just at one level, the fact that you do have those wonderful were there. Maybe it was a couple of summers ago, but what we loved about it was that it wasn't just one type of plant in that raised bed. It was a variety of things, including vegetables. So it was really nice to see that. I'm wondering, Andelin, are there any questions that people might have?
Sure. One has come in so far asking, do you offer any small quiet sessions for people with autism?
Yes, we do, and that we have those sessions one-on-one. They can be, and one of the things we've just purchased or about to purchase is bariatric chairs. We had a problem with lawn chairs; they're just so fragile, and they get weathered and everything like that. Now we've got some more durable chairs because for safety reasons as well too, and which is a new thing for us. But yes. Contact our horticultural therapist at the email address ht@enablingarden.org, and you can coordinate one-on-one visits.
Okay, so what I'd like to do is, if there are other questions, we'll hold those questions, and then what I want to do is I want to introduce Crystal. So Trevor, can you do me a favor? Can you stop sharing, and then I'm going to share my page. Okay, so I'm just going to very quickly introduce Crystal Beaudoin. So Crystal grew up in the countryside of southwestern Ontario, and during her childhood, she spent her spare time outside learning about the local flora and fauna. Her mother taught her about the medicinal properties of plants, and together they enjoyed many homemade teas derived from the native plants. Sounds good. Crystal has worked as a horticultural therapist in long-term care settings for over a year, and she's currently working on her Master's of Counseling Psychology degree, through which she will combine her psychotherapy with other healing modalities, such as horticultural therapy. Crystal specializes in the use of horticultural therapy to support older adults who are living with dementia and other types of cognitive impairments. And I think the fact that we've had sort of different levels of, care and use of plants, and I think it's very nice to sort of finish off, because we kept hearing about horticultural therapist. Now we have someone who is skilled in that. And I'm going to turn it over to Crystal. I'm going to stop sharing, and I'll let Crystal take over.
Did everybody see it? My presentation? So my presentation's title is Horticultural Therapy in Long-Term Care, a Symbiotic Approach to Recreational Programming. And I think the explanation behind that, or the meaning behind that, will become apparent as we go through the slides. I'll get started. I know we don't have a lot of time.
Crystal, because we started a little bit later, we're
Mhm.
gonna go, and I hope it's okay with everybody, we're gonna go a little bit later. We'll extend it by maybe about 10 minutes. I hope that's okay with everybody.
So just a brief outline, I'll define horticultural therapy, talk about how it works, the populations that I work with in long-term care and dementia, how it works with memory loss, and benefits of horticultural therapy to residents living in long-term care, and some activities that we go through, and then questions. So I took this definition from the Canadian Horticultural Therapy Association website. It's a formal practice that uses plants, horticultural activities, and the garden landscape to promote well-being for its participants. The key points are that horticultural therapy is goal-oriented with defined outcomes and assessment procedures. So the sessions are administered by professionally trained horticultural therapists. And in long-term care settings, we are really part of the interdisciplinary team. So we use the same sort of software to document the outcomes for each resident as other team members such as nurses or PSWs would use. So our goals are well defined for each program. Attendance is documented, outcomes are documented, and then we use that documentation and assessment of that in order to plan future interventions. We do group-based activities, and we also do one-on-one, depending on the resident's needs. And this is a picture of the greenhouse. There's a little greenhouse at actually both locations, both long-term care homes where I work. So just looking at sort of the health conditions that are supported in long-term care, one of the major ones is obviously dementia, and Alzheimer's being a type of dementia. And that's the one that I'm going to focus on today. And I chose this picture because with dementia, it is kind of like piece by piece, you lose some capabilities and memory loss. And I'll go through that in a little bit more detail, but I do think this is a good sort of example of how it works. It's irreversible chronic neurodegenerative disease. Around 70% of residents living in long-term care homes have dementia, and the most common type of dementia being Alzheimer's dementia. So a good portion of the population that I work with has Alzheimer's disease. So the memory loss can begin with, word finding difficulties. Short-term memory is lost first because that's part of the prefrontal cortex, which tends to be affected first by Alzheimer's or other dementias. Long-term memory loss occurs later. So because long-term memories are stored in visual, auditory, olfactory components, or parts of the brain that are responsible for those. And they're connected by the hippocampus. So as a result, episodes can be played back. It's called episodic memory or autobiographical memory. So this is important when we're thinking about using horticulture as a therapeutic intervention, because we have, we have sensory components such as smells and sounds and sights in the garden that can bring back memories for residents. So if we can recreate some of the sensory components of the memories, for example, the smell of a rose or something like that, then we can invoke these memories in the residents. So just as an example, with wild strawberries, for example, the residents could touch, smell, and taste the plant and the fruit. And then, we can ask prompting questions such as, did you eat these as a child? Or what does the smell remind you of? And we can trigger recollection of past experiences with those kind of questions. Further prompting might include Did you see any bees or butterflies when you were, picking the wild strawberries or moths? And how did you feel and what was that experience? And then sort of tailoring programming to the residents' ability. So maybe they can't speak, but maybe, just letting them have that sensory experience and then having them nod their head or just, letting them taste the berries. It's called person-centered or resident-centered care. So for benefits to residents, it helps with a renewal of the sense of self. So these memories can sort of bring back that sense of selfhood that is often compromised with dementia. They're often the recipients of care, all day, every day, but this gives them an opportunity to care for other beings and share their own knowledge about, it fosters a sense of community. So with nature and with other residents. And, it's the sensory stimulation because, not all of them have the ability to communicate using words or, to see or hear. So trying to create programs that stimulate multiple senses at once. There's exercise and fresh air. It's a way of expressing oneself and being creative. And there are spiritual benefits as well with the connection to nature. Pollinators. So I'm just learning a little bit about pollinators now. So I'm going to be implementing more, planting of native species and pollinator-friendly plants this year. But we can benefit them by using native plants. We never use pesticides. We increase public awareness because residents have families that are visiting every day. So, we can get them involved and we can educate them as well. And of course, there's going to be food and nesting space for pollinators. Benefits to staff, learning opportunities, just, being able to go outside and have their lunch in a peaceful environment, and increased residents and family satisfaction and engagement. So the activities we plan are cyclical based on the seasons. So in the spring, we'll be planting. The summer, we're watering and harvesting and doing that maintenance. Tasting the berries, the leaves, the flowers closer to the end of summer and in the fall. And then we can also look into pollinator watching and identifying sessions, because that gives residents an opportunity to share their knowledge as well. And then we can dry some of the plants, use them for crafts and cooking. So I've given an example of some scented sachets here. We've made those in the past many times with things that we harvested from the garden. And some projects that I'd like to implement this year. So making a wooden bee nest, which was an idea that I took from Pollination Guelph's website. Doing research with residents into, the plants that we can get, the native plants that we can put in. And then I'd like to increase the number and variety of pollinator-friendly plants on site because I am somewhat limited by the fact that it's a private long-term care home, but we can definitely work it in as best we can. That's it. I went a little bit fast, but
there we go. That's great, Crystal. I mean, it was, the thing is, what was so nice about that is you tied everything together. Difference and I really appreciate the perspective that you have because when Claire was talking about horticultural therapists and how important it was, and then Trevor also with his talk, I mean, it was nice to see that other perspective. So I'm going to share my screen, but I'm just wondering if anybody has any questions that they would like to ask Crystal or Trevor. Now that we've got them both here, but I'm just sharing my screen now. So any questions that you might have for both Crystal and I really appreciate the perspective that you have, because, you know, when Claire was talking about horticultural therapists and how important it was, and then Trevor also with his talk, I mean, it was nice to see that other perspective. So I'm going to share my screen, but I'm just wondering if anybody has any questions that they would like to ask Crystal or Trevor, now that we've got them both here. But I'm just sharing my screen now. So any questions that you might have for both Crystal and Trevor. And Andalyn, I'll let you take that over.
We have one so far, which I think is mostly maybe directed for Crystal. Are there special schools to learn to be a horticultural therapist? I think they're asking, are there special schools where you could go to study that?
We don't have any special schools here in Ontario, but we do have, if you become a member of the Canadian Horticultural Therapy Association, you can actually take coursework through that organization, and then you can get registration with them as a professional horticultural therapist.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So through the Canadian Horticultural Association, you said?
Horticultural Therapy Association.
Therapy Association, there we go.
And we hire interns from the horticultural who are people learning to be therapists, and because they need 1,000 hours. And so we've hired a few, and we intend to hire some more through the summer months as well.
But it's also nice, Crystal, to hear that you're not just putting plants in for plant's sake, but you're actually considering the benefits to both the people and the pollinators as well. And I don't see why we can't do that. And but also to have people, as you said, research, but get them in, you know, get them involved, have some ownership into the plants that go in there, and why there is the benefit. Andalyn, was there another question?
Not yet. Maybe just a couple more minutes, folks, if you want to get any questions in. But I just wanted to thank our speakers, and Corinne and I chose this topic because we thought it was really interesting to dive into the mental, emotional, and spiritual side that pollinator habitats give. We always talk about the pollinators benefiting from these habitat, but people benefit from it too. And it was really interesting to hear about these ways, that it brings a sense of community to people, that it helps bring back memories, that it helps people get through tough times. So thank you for all the stories that all of you have shared, and I hope all of our participants enjoyed it.
Yeah. Okay, so not seeing any more in a question there, even though I'm going on to the next slide, but you can still pop in a question if you want. So I also want to draw people's attention to our next presentation, which is going to be April 26th. And we're still actually getting our speakers sorted out, but we're going to be looking at landscaped areas and pollinators. There are so many landscape companies out there, and so many people wanting, just the correct sort of space, a landscape space. But can we also at the same time, can we support pollinators? And yes, we can. So we want to promote that. And also we're going to be doing a summer workshop. We're just getting the date worked out about pollinator workshop, but focusing on bumblebee pollination in particular. And we're going to be hosting it at CRESC, which is the Clare Road Emergency Services Center up on Clare Road. And it actually, if you haven't seen that garden, between, the Hospice Garden is at the Gosling Garden in Hospice Wellington, as well as the CRESC Garden is absolutely amazing. So I hope you get a chance to see that. There will be notifications about that, and you'll be able to register on our website. The other thing is, we need donations. We are a completely We are a completely volunteer-run charitable organization, and we rely on those donations for, the plants and the materials for our insurance. Let's get real. For website, for Zoom hosting, for guest speakers, outreach activities, and and people can donate through Canada Helps by mail or in person. And you can see that there it is on our website, is just donate online, and you can do that. For those that have donated, we really appreciate that. And we also really appreciate our sponsors, which I'll talk about again before we leave. We need volunteers. Now, I was really impressed when Trevor said the number of volunteers they had and how wonderful they were. And we also need volunteers. That's Marion right there. She's one of our longtime standing volunteers and works very hard along with all sorts of other members of Pollination Guelph, including Claire and Sierra and Shannon. But we need them for planting as well as maintenance of these gardens. Sometimes it'll be daytime, sometimes it'll be evening, depending on the time of year. We also need help with displays and presentations and social media. We need to get the word out. We're the ones that are at CD Saturday and, sharing the wonderful, sharing what we know about pollinators and how people can bring them into their own gardens. We need to update outreach materials. We need directors for our board. And if you want to email us, our email is at pollinationguelph@gmail.com. Now, some of you may have been asking, when's on Saturday, May 27th at Riverside Park in the afternoon. And that's allowing us to set up in the morning rather than having to have a security guard there in the evening to look after things. But it should be a really good plant sale. Once again, if you've got any native plants and you want to donate them, and volunteers are welcome. And once again, I'm going to push the books because the books are really important. This one in particular is one of my favorites, but this is now, when those bees start coming out, those native bees start coming out and you want to know what they are, this little book is going to be helpful to you. But once again, I want to thank our sponsors, our silver sponsor, Abood Associates, and the wonderful work they do, as well as Bee Sweet Nature Company with their lovely honeys and bee products, as well as their great supply of native plants that you can purchase. So, in just closing, thank you very much. Happy spring to everybody. Thanks to Claire Mason, Trevor Barton, and Crystal Beaudoin for sharing their different perspectives on how plants and pollinators can benefit both us, our health, and the environment, I should add. And thanks to all the Pollination Guelph volunteers who helped to make this event happen, and to you for listening to us. And, I know we had a few little technical difficulties, but everybody understands it's happens. So we hope you take at least one piece of information you've learned tonight and share it with a friend, with a family member, or on social media. And join our newsletter and follow us on social media for updates. So see you at our next event. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us, and have a good evening.